sometimes in these cases is proving the causation. I work inside the health system. You alluded to this. I'm a legal aid lawyer, but I'm embedded inside the hospital. Here's my little Prisma badge. So under the medical legal partnership approach, I'm part of that team. So these doctors are constantly seeing kids with asthma or cystic fibrosis or, some condition where irritants like mold or other environmental irritants in housing is a huge problem. And it drives them right into the emergency room, right into the hospital. And they can pump these kids full of medications and try to treat it medically, but they really find someone with the skill set of you and me, lawyers, civil lawyers, can really be the best tool to address this, because we can use our skill set to get the apartment improved and the environment improved, therefore less visits to the ER, less medications. But to make that persuasive argument, I need to, like we already alluded to, I need to identify the right law, the right defendant. Is this mold? I got to document the moisture of some kind, show the mold, and then show that linkage to the health problem that we're seeing, the damages. Certainly, it's bad to have mold in the apartment anytime, but if you've got a child with asthma and you're missing work and the kid's in the hospital and your kid's missing school, this is when the damages can get really big, and this is when a landlord needs to take urgent action. So let's talk about that briefly. Just how do we show that linkage? What's your view on connecting that? Like we talked about, there's no real national standard on how much mold is acceptable or not. We see some types of cases, dog bite litigation, for example, or bed bugs, where it's just evolved to where there's these sort of general standards that, your dog can bite someone once, but after that, strict liability, you're liable after that. It varies from state to state. But so many mold cases across the country, and yet no real standard for that, and no real guidance on causation and the linkage to that health damage. What would you say on that? How would you let lay people think about that issue?
Yeah, that's an important point, because people often think these cases are simple. I've got mold, my child's been sick, there's an obvious connection there, and there is. Common sense says that there is, but the law is a lot more complicated than that, and particularly when you're talking about a civil lawsuit. And that is where these cases can get complex and expensive, frankly, because unlike a dog bite case, where you can just say, this dog bit me, I went to the ER, here are my bills. You don't need expert testimony or science really to make that connection. You definitely do in a mold case, and it's usually a couple of pieces to it. One being what we discussed earlier in terms of a mold expert to say, yes, you've got mold and this is the type, and these are the possible side effects and symptoms of that mold exposure. And then also a medical component to it of a doctor that you've been to or your child has been to saying, I think to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, these symptoms and these problems are caused by the mold. This isn't a common cold. This isn't just some other malady out there, something that he brought home from school. And so you really do need those two pieces. And the one I've found the hardest is the medical component, because doctors don't always have enough information to where they can feel very confident to connect the dots there. And so the obstacle that poses to me as a private attorney is I've got somebody who's walked into my office with what looks like a plausible case, but it's going to take a significant investment of cost to get a mold expert and a medical expert to connect all the dots. And so I run into the case frequently where I think there could be something there, but from a resource standpoint, it's very hard for me to push that along. And that is where Kirby's project really steps into the breach. And so and I've had a couple of cases lately where I've been scuffling, trying to figure out how to help somebody, because of those kind of cost obstacles and things like that. And then Kirby has been able to step in and take that through the medical legal partnership and press that and get a good result for the client. So it might be a good moment, Kirby, for you to talk, if you don't mind, a little bit more about how you get connected with those cases and what you're able to do to kind of get that beneficial result for some people and for Prisma.
That's great. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's great. I think, our medical legal partnership, in fact, Susan Ingalls developed a whole Level Up Law episode on that. So if you really want to learn more, she'll tell you how to do that here in a minute as we wrap up. But yeah, the medical legal partnership approach, you take people like me and Jay, people with these skill sets of dealing with landlords and knowing the law, and you sort of use that person inside the health system as another tool for the physicians that are seeing these problems. The real time to do this, if you've got a young child with a diagnosed condition like asthma or some sort of issue with breathing, man, it is important. Those first 8 years of life, you've got to keep them away from smokers. You've got to keep them away from pets with hair that causes allergic reaction. All the things that all parents do, but man, you've got to keep them away from toxic mold that can really, really cause lifelong detriment to their breathing development and certainly pleasure of life and ability. So yeah, the medical legal partnership really here in South Carolina in the upstate since 2016, but across the country since the mid 90s really has proven valuable to those type of physicians. The pediatric pulmonologists, they really love the idea that they have this tool that they can send out into the world outside the four walls of the hospital, as they say. They can keep these kids well inside the hospital, but as soon as they send them back to a moldy apartment, it's tough. The causation issues, there are so many factors. I have gone to an apartment once thinking, oh, there's going to be mold. And I think there was, causing maybe this 3-year-old to have terrible breathing problems. But there also were 2 smokers in the house and 3 cats. And so, that's where if you get in front of a jury or you take the case to court, it's a little complicated to demand that, everyone draw the conclusion that the mold is the cause of this child's breathing problem. There's a lot of factors and moving parts. So those are the challenges. That's really just kind of a quick hit on what I want the general public to know. When you have mold in your apartment, you're a renter, you're upset about it, you're going to reach out to a private attorney like Jay, or you're going to be connected to a legal aid lawyer through a medical legal partnership like me. These are the ways we think about the case. We kind of gave you an overview of the law, the defendant, the mold issue, so that some of the details, some of the concerns that we worry about make a case weak or strong.